I was watching one of my favorite music scholars, Robert Fithin, as he went through the albums of 1983. Suddenly he mentioned a Grand Funk record I had no idea even existed. The more he talked about it, the more I thought, how could this be forgotten? I'd always known Grand Funk as a 1970s powerhouse, the working man's rock and roll band. I owned their live album on CD, but this was news to me. Curiosity kicked in. I did a quick dive, no expectations. I found myself playing air guitar through the entire thing, track after track, no skips. What I felt was the same vibe I've gotten from Yes's Tornado and ELP's Love Beach. A misunderstood record, not the most popular among fans, but an exotic product of its time, with a story that's a fascinating odyssey. This is the band that once sold out Shea Stadium faster than the Beatles. Yet in 1983, their album didn't even chart. No tour, no buzz. Forgotten overnight. And since this is mostly a Zeppelin channel, you might ask, is there a Zeppelin connection? There is. The artwork was done by the same designer behind Physical Graffiti. This is the tale of Grand Funk Railroad, embracing the 80s in hopes of a comeback, and how it all crashed to the ground. An album that holds one of the best songs of 1983. This is the making of What's Funk. It's June 1975. Grand Funk just finished a world tour and had been through a lot, coming back from their former manager keeping copyright to a big chunk of their discography, touring like crazy, building on the momentum of We're an American Band, 2 albums released in 1974, and cherry on top, a live album, Caught in the Act, proving their act was as real as musicianship could be, grooving, rocking, and funking. They were burned out, on the verge of breaking up, and still owed 2 more albums to Capitol Records. And so they went back into the studio against their will, or maybe willing not to fight each other. In came Born to Die. No, not Lana Del Rey's second studio album, but Grand Funk's 10th release. Despite the introspective 70s vibes in the style of the Eagles and Steve Miller, away from frenzy funk party mode, their January 1976 album peaked at number 47, the lowest chart of their career. Their audience had a hard time understanding them, away from being foot-stomping entertainers. Some speculated it had to do with Grand Funk being a rock and roll orphan. They were not considered southern rock, nor leaders of the new American rock sounds of Boston and Heart. There was no promo tour for Born to Die, living up to its title, Born to Die. A shame, because I think it's a good album. So one more album to leave Capitol Records, and who came in as producer? Mr. Soudalures, Mr. Dental Floss Crop, Mr. Brown Shoes Don't Make It himself, Frank Zappa. Frank was given the complicated job of not only producing but keeping the band together in the middle of heavy tension and breaking up every 5 minutes. It was not Zappa's first time producing a band outside of his music. There was Wildman Fisher and Captain Beefheart. So the album title Frank came up for Grand Funk was really classic Zappa. Good singing, good playing, good old Frank. Grand Funk's drummer Don Brewer, quote, "We were blown away. Here's Frank Zappa. Oh my god, Frank Zappa, the musician's musician kind of thing, and he thinks Grand Funk Railroad is good singing, good playing." It was an extreme compliment. Zappa's vision contributed to a fascinating sound mix, bringing much-needed studio justice to Grand Funk's power, plus one Zappa guitar cameo on one track. Oh yes, and you had Big Buns, which I suspect was influenced by Frank. The band's 11th studio album was released on August 9th, 1976, becoming their worst chart-performing record so far. That album cover didn't help. You don't believe me? Well, Capitol put out a greatest hits title in November. How's that for damage control? Grand Funk finally got their wish granted. They disbanded and split in 2 camps, like Creedence, John Fogerty versus the other not Fogertys. Mark Farner got an Atlantic Records solo deal with the release of his self-titled debut that probably didn't sell many units with that album cover. Mr. Farner, I won't question your musicianship ever, but I mean, this was 1977, and the back cover was not a rock and roll hit among teenagers, I bet. The record sounded like Grand Funk with a reverb effect on, plus some ballads in between. He opened for Rush. Farner had momentum, but he couldn't go solo against the Solar Federation of the record-buying market, unbeatable. But he wasn't done yet. Enter the Mark Farner Band with 1978's No Frills. I don't know why, but I feel the album cover is a prequel to Breakfast in America. The songs here really predict the 80s for many rockers, with Farner and the band delivering a catchy set of tunes, including a cover of When a Man Loves a Woman. Personnel for the album included bassist Dennis Bellinger. Save the name for later. He also played on Mark's debut, so they probably got along. The rest of Grand Funk, now former Grand Funks, Brewer, Shacker, and Frost, signed with Columbia to record 1978's Flint. With much more emphasis on the rhythm section side of things, it pointed to the elephant in the room. Both post-Grand Funk efforts sounded like incomplete Grand Funk camps. The secret sauce had been split into 3 albums, but none of them did well on the charts. Nobody was grand buying these. They fell in a strange category next to Ted Nugent, Frank Marino, and those Hendrix posthumous albums. Record buyers didn't really want them in favor of the Van Halens, the Journeys, and the Tom Pettys. 1979 and 1980 went by with no Grand Funk until 1981, when Irving Azoff's spin-off label, Full Moon, came knocking on Mark Farner and Don Brewer's doors with an offer they could refuse, but probably shouldn't if they wanted to keep their careers afloat. Full Moon's roster at the time included Dan Fogelberg, J.D. Souther, the Urban Cowboy soundtrack, and Dan Fogelberg again. Full Moon had bigger plans aiming to revive American legends. They'd soon be signing Peter Cetera and putting out Chicago 16, the money-making monster of the early 80s. In the middle of all this, Grand Funk Lives was born. Yes, it sounds like a Friday the 13th sequel, but they were back for album number 12. In the year of Journey's Don't Stop Believin', how could this not look like a great idea on paper, right? 70s Grand Funk keyboardist Craig Frost was busy, and bassist Mel Shacker wasn't interested. So in came a new lineup: Farner, Brewer, session keys by Lance Duncan Ong, and Farner's solo album guy Dennis Bellinger on bass. Although the album did poorly on the charts, and by poorly I mean peaking at 149 on Billboard, it's a headbanging experience. Grand Funk on steroids with a massive, layered, and exciting sound. They came back on the road for the first time since 1975, playing the United States well into 1982, plus a couple of historic shows in Venezuela and a third return to Japan that used to be a bootleg and was officially released on Spotify in 2025 as In the Groove, Live Tokyo 82. Please check it out. Full Moon Records expected a follow-up, and so, in late 1982, sessions for What's Funk took place, with 2 recording teams, Al Hirschman and Dee Hirschman over at Square Studios, Michigan, and Peter Thea and Greg Mann over at Media Sound Studios, New York City. The result was Grand Funk's best-sounding record of their career. Put your headphones on, and the clarity speaks for itself. Pristine PV amp crunch riffs and overdubs, heavy-breathing Ludwig drums, slick bass power, and wait for it, tasteful synthesizers. This was indeed good singing, good playing, good mixing. Ted Nugent's former drummer and key to Ted's success all the way up to their last gig at California Jam 1978, Cliff Davis, was brought in as one of the producers for What's Funk. Working alongside him was British talent Gary Lyons, an engineer whose resume included Ian Hunter, Nuts, Peter Straker, Trillion, Aerosmith, That Wicked Queen on Steroids Aviary album, The Grateful Dead, and Humble Pie. As a producer, Lyons had already worked with Foreigner, Kevin Lamb, and The Outlaws. Artwork was done by Peter Corriston, the visionary behind Led Zeppelin's Physical Graffiti. It's straight up an 80s visual metaphor. High-stakes tension, political and cultural turbulence bleeding into the Reagan years, and the music industry itself in survival mode. A woman holding jumper cables stands before the Lincoln Memorial reflecting pool with the Washington Monument behind her, a shock image hovering over America's symbolic heartbeat. The back cover mirrors the scene, adding studio photos and the band's logo, but the real key is the color language: the yellow swimsuit, the deep blue sky, the red cables. It's pure primary color symbolism, a back-to-basics palette for a band trying to restart the engine midway through their 30s. Let me talk about my favorite tracks on here. Rock and Roll American Style has killer guitar layer overdubs up there with the finest examples of the decade. It's grand funk, but it sounds modern. This is how their 70s output should have been recorded. Both Don't Lie to Me and Life in Outer Space have riffs that Jimmy Page and Alex Lifeson would smile to. Crushing riffery, Farner style. Nowhere to Run is a nice 60s throwback and full circle for the flower power generation, now working day jobs and facing receding hairlines. Borderline is a fine grand funk ballad about love and hate relationships. You'll be humming the chorus all day. Now on to El Salvador. Talk about heavy metal sounding funk. While the guitar riff sounds like the Rolling Stones' Satisfaction and Jumping Jack Flash, this song rocks damn hard. We can speculate the lyrics referred to El Salvador's tragic civil war at the time, ahead of the 1986 film by Oliver Stone. Say what you will, but musically speaking, there's enough passion on this track to end all wars around the world. Mark Farner's vocals on the James Brown cover of It's a Man's World shines big time. I had no expectations for this one, and now I'm a fan for life. And now the reason I made this episode. Side B, track 3, I'm So True. A left field track you'd never guess it's grand funk, but this has to be the most effective integration of 80s technology and 70s classic rock ever made. From the astute drum beat to the way keyboards provide a fresh approach to dynamics, it begs the question, what's funk? One of the best songs of 1983. Despite their best intentions, What's Funk didn't even chart on Billboard, and it never had a chance. There was no promotion, no tour, no push from Full Moon Records. There are many reasons for this, but in February 1983, Don Brewer jumped into Bob Seger's Silver Bullet Band for a 77-date North American tour. Former Grand Funk keyboardist Craig Frost was already there, so the move made perfect sense, but it meant Grand Funk Railroad simply wasn't available to stand behind their own record. So the band quietly called it quits, and What's Funk was left to sink on Impact. Reviews in 1983 were mixed, but almost everyone agreed on one thing: the sound was shockingly good. Still, not all critics played fair. The Buffalo News trashed the track El Salvador, mocking it as perfect for White House parties and implying right-wing extremists would tap their feet to it. They also accused the riff of ripping off Mr. Soul by Buffalo Springfield, conveniently forgetting that Mr. Soul was also inspired by the Stones' Satisfaction and Jumping Jack Flash. Other papers gave the band a more level-headed take. The Indianapolis Star said the album was not quite good and not quite bad, calling it middle of the road rather than heavy. An odd review considering this is the fullest, hardest-hitting production Grand Funk ever had. But such is life, right? Thankfully, some reviewers actually got it. One 4-star write-up praised the band's effort and recognized What's Funk as something different, a late-era reinvention that deserved more than a shrug. This remains Grand Funk's final studio album to date, a weird, powerful, misunderstood finale.